Good evening. It's March 20th, 2019, and we are in the Raymond Broadcast Studio. I'd like to call to order the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors. Mr. Prince?
Kate Bricks.
Present.
Eric Colby.
Present.
Janie Cummins.
Present.
Don Dillon. Marge Gavoni.
Present.
Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Kenny.
Here.
Kate LeVaye.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Prince, are there any adjustments to the agenda? Okay. This is an opportunity for public input. Does anyone from the public have any input? Okay, seeing none. We're going to do our A-team cost centers. And first is Mr. Patton and the Wyndham Middle School.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. It's good to see all of you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about Wyndham Middle School. What I want to do, board seems to always be interested in good news, so I thought I'd share some good news, some hard work first. So I'll run through some of these points while it's handed out for you. Keep it fresh in your mind. Our ed techs have been working really hard to provide more targeted skills to meet the specific needs of students receiving special education services with reading, writing, math, and executive functioning. I think sometimes we don't tend to highlight some of our support staff who are really critical to student plans and student learning. They're really deep in the trenches, sometimes even more so than teachers. Our teachers are working to refine components of our writing program, including conferencing. Math teachers have already created a shift in instruction aligned with our math audit recommendations. We're continuing to work on differentiation, and we'll likely develop a school-wide model of instruction that lends itself to providing small group and individual instruction in the regular classroom setting. That's going to be a need for math next year when we look at the math programming. It's already a need when we talk about the workshop model for units of study and extending that model of instruction, being able to have students work independently so that I can work in small groups with kids based off of their needs. That's a shift that we're going to have to make to continue to stay caught up with our learners that come from a lot of different backgrounds. Applied arts staff have been working really hard on their curriculum guides and unit design. Christine's presented that to you. It's all on the website. They continue to add and update that. Some really key people that I'd like to mention. Melissa Baugh is always our lead special education coach. Absolute rock star, worth her weight in gold when it comes to the professional development that she delivers. I have the opportunity to sit in on a lot of that professional development. I have learned so much from her to be able to provide to teachers, and teachers, ed techs have learned so much from her. So fantastic asset resource for the district. Lynette, who's here tonight, I don't know if she knows I was going to highlight her, but the Director of Community Connections has been instrumental in developing our mentoring program. Something that we've been cooking and that will go out on listserv pretty soon is we're working on developing a workers permit course designed for 8th graders who are interested in basically in getting a job. So this is the time of year that kids are starting to look for that summer work. They're becoming 14. I'll get requests from Sandy at the superintendent's office regarding students and whether or not I feel they're fit for a workers permit. Ryan's getting those as well. So we thought we'd do some prep with them. We'd offer that during our Ignite reading block. So we're going to do a trial of that coming up after April break, and then we'll have a sort of a bigger program for that next year. Some of our staff needs, I've mentioned these to you before, but I just wanted to highlight them. Social work services continue to be a significant need. Just some rough numbers, so if you're like, Drew, it's not quite 1,100, it's 1,139, or it's 1,022. Basically, Wyndham Middle School and Manchester Schools has one social worker between the two schools. That really limits some of our options. That's for special education services only. So I don't have any flexibility when it comes to providing social work services on a bigger level to students who are not identified with special education services. As we get through conflicts with social media, as middle school kids develop, I think they're more aware of some of the family situations, stressors that they have, and it comes up over and over again as a need to help some of our kids out in terms of making sure that their most basic needs are met before they can attend to instruction in the classroom. Foreign language opportunities, that was something we were working on this year to add to the budget. We weren't able to do that. Continuing to have kids that go up to the high school who have more than just Spanish as a background with all the languages that they're able to offer there. This is my poor me statement, so an increase in of administrative support. So with just the current needs with supervision evaluation, with the number of staff members we have, I've started to implement walkthroughs this year, which are really 10, 15-minute walkthroughs to gather data, give feedback to teachers. Mrs. McBride and I, the assistant principal, our goal was to deliver 9 of those to each staff member this year. We're at 3 or 2, and so not quite there. And then, as you all know, we have a looming Wyndham Middle School construction project coming up that I think will compromise my time a little bit more. So I kind of worry about where those pieces come from. I'd like to give teachers as much feedback and support in the classroom as possible. There are a lot of kids that I work with daily who have intensive plans, check-ins, check-outs, and there's really only so many resources available in the school to be able to do that. So we become creative as we can, but at the end of the day, there are some kids that I worry about not serving who are the underserved. So, questions about any of that? And I'm talking really fast for the sake of time. Cover sheet, everybody ready to move on to that one? See my numbers on there. We've been going up in population, so which obviously is tied to the budget. So overall, we need to add a teacher to 6th grade so that we have 10 homerooms next year in 6th grade, 10 homerooms in 7th grade, and we're going to reduce a teacher in grade 8. That gives us the net loss, and so we'll just be shuffling a few people around. Any questions about staffing? Nothing else changes. I have no additions to our applied arts staffing, special education staffing, or anything else like that. Kate?
Did I hear you correctly that you're adding a teacher in 6th grade?
Correct.
And according,
So there are currently 9 teachers in 6th grade, 9 what we call homeroom teachers, content teachers. So that's
Okay,
going up to
well,
10.
It says 10 here.
it says 10 here.
Do you mean 7th grade?
No,
Currently, you have 10 6th grade teachers, is that right?
I think that,
That's not right.
oh, sorry, that's correct.
That's correct.
Let me get back to when I made this in December. We currently have 10, we're adding 10 to 7th grade. So 10, 10, and 8.
I'm with you now.
Sorry, that's my fault.
That's your 2 big grades, right? Those are the 2 large.
Correct. Yep, after that, that one drops off a little bit in 5th grade. I think the bigger challenge will be as they move up, given the different facilities in Field Allen and Wyndham Middle School, having to shift some classrooms around to accommodate for that. Those larger grades are moving into some of the smallest classrooms within the school. So we'll have to be a little bit more creative. Might be some different furniture purchases or moving around to just really make efficient use of the space that we have. If we're taking a look at some of the areas, cost center lines, one addition is the jobs for main graduate salary of $12,500.
Right.
If you remember correctly, that was free this current year. Definitely a deal at $12,500 for next year. We have an excellent certified librarian. She has been combing through our books and really finding some needs. So her proposed budget is nowhere close to what I was able to provide for her. And so she's just going to continue to work with what she has. She's fantastic connecting kids to books. She is really fantastic about getting kids books that are difficult, that kids that just aren't readers, that need particular topics to read to be of interest to them. Our supply line has increased. We've just moved some money around, but to support executive functioning, these were purchases we made not knowing we were doing school-wide executive functioning this time last year. That was a decision that we made in late May, early June, which then required the purchase of planners for every single student as opposed to just 6th grade students, and then also 14 pocket folders. Which was part of the executive functioning plan. We'll give a couple of different options next year, but in terms of a cost, those are about $6 each, and we have more than 600 kids. So it adds up pretty quickly when we're trying to support those things. In terms of shifting some of those costs to parents, last year with the addition of the 14 pocket folder, that was something that was not found very easily. There were a couple choices on Amazon. We didn't feel it was fair to parents to sort of present them with that burden. So we'll have a couple of different options this year for parents, either self-supplied, meeting our requirements, or the availability to purchase those things at school as well. Did I meet the 15-minute mark?
Any, Marge?
On pink pages, I could go to the white, but we'll do the pink page.
Pink page.
73 of 83, down towards the bottom.
Yep.
Differentials and stipends. I was wondering what the big jump was, increase of 15,000 plus. It's probably the fifth from the bottom, sixth, whatever. It's under elementary co-curricular activities programs. No, the white says the same thing. Yeah. You want to go to the white? Maybe it's easier for you to find.
No, I see it under there, under differentials and stipends, 84% increase. Is that the line that you're looking at? I'd have to look back at that and see what that increase is related to. What I can tell you from memory in terms of working with Stacy on it is I have sort of a pot, and there was some pieces of that pot that were redistributed and relabeled, but there wasn't there was no request for additional positions or anything else like that. So I'll work with Chris and Stacy on that to get back to you.
Great, thank you.
Joe, on your wants or your needs items, understanding a little bit about how the A-team gets together and talks about, but is that something that you brought up?
Yeah, so those, social work has been a conversation. It's been a conversation recently. Administrative support has been a conversation. Foreign language, those pieces. If you look back at some of the previous versions, you would have seen a line for an assistant principal in there. You would have seen a line for a full-time foreign language teacher reduced to 1 day a week. There hasn't been, in terms of social work, is a little more complex with special ed, and that's really Lisa's umbrella. I don't think we have many social workers that are doing other work besides special education services, very few, if any. But allowing some of that flexibility would help. So yes, those are all conversations that we've had.
Just, I don't know, how do I, try to think of the words here, but, so we didn't feel that it would be appropriate based on the amount of the budget that we wanted to, we thought we may want to present to the public, or? Trying to say that right without putting anybody in jeopardy.
I think that's actually a correct way to put it, is that when we looked at all requests as an A-team, what did we think there was an amount? Because I think our initial budget came in close to 9%, and then over time really took a look at, what were the essential student needs that we need to fund while still keeping a reasonable budget.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things started to disappear. There's still needs, there's no question about it. And I think all the needs that were presented by the administrators are legitimate needs of things that they need in their building. It's what will our community actually support when it comes to passing a budget.
I guess
It's a difficult thing, I get it. But
I think some things tend to be maintenance. When we talk about adding an assistant principal, we go, well, how? You've been able to survive on that for a long period of time, and that's a piece of it is survival and not necessarily growth. There's a difference between
Right,
those things.
right,
We've been
right.
able to survive with one social worker,
Right, but
the needs.
is that what we want for our goal? And not trying to put that on you, I'm putting that on all of us, because we throw that burden at you guys when you come up here, and I hear it time after time after time, like, sorry, I had to ask for this, and it.
One to give you a counter to that, an easy addition to the budget is JMG. One, it's a small cost amount.
Yeah.
Two, it's a program that's already been established, and so the cost effectiveness is great. The return on investment when it comes to working with kids who are underserved and who need more support, more leadership, that tie into the high school program. I wouldn't exchange JMG. I would die on that hill, so to say.
Right.
That's a big one. But when we're left with really difficult choices, sometimes it does come down to we've been able to make that work before. do you know what?
Right.
There's a lot
But, I
there.
mean, I've been around the block. I work for a company, maybe different, but when we're overworked, we start bogging down. We're not as productive. We start thinking about where else can I go? Those kind of things. And I definitely don't want to see that. If the kid came in with that great fire, I hate to see it be put out because you haven't had the support that you need.
Yeah, I think more than that is really just making sure that staff feel that way, and that is a bit in terms of the administrative end of things, being able to check in with people, being able to work intensely with kids and families, being able to be in the classrooms to be able to see how a student's behaviors are or be able to give feedback
Right.
to a teacher. That's all really important stuff that I do feel helps the overall culture of the building. It helps the overall the individual staff who may be struggling with something that does make a difference for them, that can impact their decisions in terms of longevity. I think Wyndham is very good at not only attracting teachers, but retaining them as well. People tend to settle here. We have a lot of staff with families here, and we'd like to keep that going. I mean, we invest in them heavily when we hire them. It makes sense to keep them invested in the community and wanting to work here. But yeah, those are some things that I think are true, are the real day-to-day work that we do.
So I won't say any more, but you know how I feel, and I would love to see that kind of perspective change a little bit, but I'll stop.
Marge?
Help me with the titles. At the primary school, I mean, Kyle had the same issue, and he made teacher, they help with the evaluations and everything.
Leaders?
Instructional leaders.
Right, to help with that. Is that possible for you to look at that? I mean, would that be?
Chris and I have batted that around a little bit. There are some, and this is not that may work for them. I think there are some pieces with how we do scheduling that can impact that. In addition to that, from an evaluative standpoint, even as department heads at the high school, my understanding is that they can evaluate, but those evaluations are not, can't be disciplinary in nature, so to say. That really needs to be coming from an administrator. There are some pieces too, I think that might put staff in an uncomfortable position, where if I'm a colleague and I'm evaluating them and give them some negative feedback on things, that can be somewhat uncomfortable. And so I do feel like there are some hats to be worn strictly by administrators. In terms of giving feedback, we've done more than ever, and having teachers work with other teachers in their classrooms, observe them, give feedback, get feedback, and I think that's helping to grow the culture, helping to expand, I think, the good work that we're doing. But at the same time, the management of that, being able to not just do evaluations by sitting in a class for an hour period of time, but rather going through and getting a pulse of the building, collecting data on how often we're seeing particular practices, behavioral interventions, academic interventions within the classroom, so that we can figure out what we know. That it takes a lot of resources. Teachers can help out with that piece, but it's not just the evaluations alone. There are the other parts of that I think are really hard to take on.
So you don't, that would not work in this situation?
I would-
is what
I
I'm
guess I would
saying
have-
At your level.
Based off of my knowledge of how that's worked in other buildings, and based off of, I guess what you call it, my personal preferences around who manages what portions of the school, I would need to see some schools, middle schools, where that seems to be effective.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I'm looking at page 71 on the pink sheets, right down near the bottom, under the regular elementary program. And I'm seeing $48,967. Is that negotiated contracts? All right. And my next question would be team leader stipends, negative 11,000.
So I think, back to your last question about differentials, I think this is where part of the shift actually took place for the differentials, is that some were moved out of this and then put into general differentials, so.
Okay.
The best way, I think the best way to explain it, Scott, is over 4 years of working there, we tend to adjust things each year because we take a look at what is spent and what isn't spent. A lot of the differentials we look at as a pool. I've shifted some of those differentials from team leaders that weren't being used to helping support the RTI teachers, our intervention teachers, through some of the work that they're doing after hours in terms of data analysis, meetings, those types of things.
Yep.
So I think that's the best way to summarize it, is just labeling it what it should be. And it, to be honest, it'll probably be another shift next year when we say, yeah, we're not using that anymore, or that's a differential extracurricular activity that we don't offer anymore.
Okay.
We try to be fairly flexible with the needs of the kids and what their interests are when it comes to that.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Pete?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment, saying that I'm actually, personally, I'm pleased to see a request for supplies in your budget. I mean,
Would you like me to add more?
you know what? If it's needed, yes, because when I sit here and think, like, we never have supplies presented to us, and I hate the idea of teachers taking money out of their own pocket, whether it's teachers, librarians, and I don't know how much of that actually goes on. I'm afraid it goes on probably too often, or requests going out to parents for additional things, and it's usually the same parents that keep responding. So I think there's a few of us on the board that are very receptive to requests for supplies, and would probably like to see it more often. So thank you.
I come from a background where typically we provided those things for students because they weren't all coming from family situations that had the means to do that or the time to do that. And so to some extent with the executive functioning plan, if that's an expectation for all, I want to remove any barriers that might be in the way, and not to make it a student feeling bad that they couldn't get the planner that we wanted or the 14 pocket folder or whatever it is. So some of those things I feel are, if they're that important, we should be providing them, and it shouldn't be at a cost to parents.
Good, thanks.
Marge? Okay, if I had a magic wand, which I don't have, I do not have, I promise you, and I don't have extra money in my pocket, and I don't speak for anybody else, but if you had to make a choice between a social worker or an assistant principal, which would you choose? If I had a magic wand.
So this is not, having to hash this out with all of the schools and their needs, because while I'm an advocate for the school, there's also the bigger picture that kids coming up to me need to be served the right way. Kids going on to Ryan School need to be served the right way. That would be difficult. I got to be honest with you. A lot of the work that I'm doing daily is I'm not a licensed clinical social worker. Maybe I need to work on that. It's hard to say.
Okay.
Some type of blend. Our numbers are kind of on that edge. When you look at the EPS formula, we're funded the right way, based off of a school of our size. I guess it would be hard to say. Probably half and half would
Half
make
and
the
half.
most sense. Yeah.
Okay.
If that's even possible.
See if I can get my wand working.
Mrs. Briggs?
As a follow-up, I'm just curious, at what point typically would a school require a second, population-wise? I mean, in general, I'm not going to hold you to it.
I was going to look at what the
think
current
that-
population is and just add one to it, but no, it's not.
No, the EPS format, I think, is 300 to every 300 students as a school administrator. I think part of the issue with Wyndham Middle School is that you're on the upper end of that. And so that's why people definitely would be a lot more busy because you're on the upper end of that 300 to 1.
So some of the work is, again, is that falls on administration is also because of not having preventative work in advance of that. So administration tends to be more reactionary because we're working with kids after the choices that they made, whereas social work services, those types of things are working with kids before the choices are made. And so that's a bit of it. Sometimes things tend to be more reactionary. Again, getting into classrooms, giving teachers feedback, giving them skills and strategies, those are all preventative measures instead of me coming in after the fact to kind of clean up the mess or impart consequences or bring parents in or what have you. And all of those things obviously eat up time and resources. When you look at a school day, the access to observing teachers is very limited. We don't have a 12-hour day for that. We have a 6.5-hour day, and the time to work with kids is limited too by the time they are out the door at 2 o'clock.
It's 305 to 1.
When was the EPS formula last updated?
Well, there's some work in the legislature coming up to actually evaluate the entire EPS formula and the matrix that was used to determine all the different positions.
I think that's a really good idea. Okay.
Chris, just a quickie, is that per any school? It doesn't matter whether it's a high school, middle
So
school?
at the time the research was done, MEPRI, and I think it was under David Silvernail at the time, actually did some work to look at high-performing, highly efficient schools across the state and what was their administrative structure, and then all of that was put into the matrix of how many different positions per student, and so that's how it was determined. But roughly it's, and the 279, which we talked about in finance tonight, actually has right on the front page what all those different ratios are. But again, those ratios are minimal as far as that's kind of the basement or the floor. Everything else goes beyond that.
Sandy?
Yeah, Jenny, I just wanted to mention, I think the one thing that we've tried to do in this district is have instructional leaders. And when you start taking on a school construction project, you'll see that the building principal begins to put more time into that than the instructional piece. So if we can't do it now, I think you're gonna have to do it in another year or two.
Right.
So, and you really want instructional leaders. I mean, that's really what you want to hire and maintain and support. So.
Certainly agreed.
One, not to harp on this, but one thing that's challenging is if I'm out of the building for a day, it's a big load on the assistant principal.
Sure.
I mean, the high school knows very well, being down just one person, that's something very heavy to ask of people. That's the part where it can become draining. You know, I did that on a Friday because Kim was off in Augusta doing some work there, and yeah, I mean, day goes by very, very quickly.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity.
And now, Mr. Karen.
Good evening. So at the high school, we've been working along, working to see how things are going to work out with our brand new administrative team, following through on our action plan, which, as we talked about months ago now, is based on a lot of the accreditation recommendations. So we've been working on curriculum guides. We've been spending a lot of time really looking at our content, determining where certain skills are going to be taught, determining what the scope and sequence is going to be, what are the essential learnings all kids need to have, and trying to develop those pieces. Put them into the form that Christina and I developed over the summer so that everybody will be able to see things in a common format. A lot of that work has been going on. Mr. Rossetti has been working hard with the math department, getting ready for the switch into the new program in Algebra 1 and Geometry. So we're excited about that. They went on a visit out of state last week and saw a school that has been in that program already. So they've come back and they're energized and they're looking at how they're going to make kind of this new way of looking at things work within our system. We've been doing a lot of work with the capstone. This is the first year. The senior capstone is a graduation requirement. We have a senior here today that's working on part of his presentation. It's a lot of work. It's been a lot of fun working with students and families, trying to bring them into this new process. Change is often difficult, and so there's been some bumps in the road, but we're working through it. We're looking forward to having a capstone fair where we'll have the opportunity to have some students share what they're doing in that setting, so that we can build in that presentation time. Some of the students were struggling on how do I find the right time to share, following the format that we put together. So we're going to build that in this year and try to do some different things. So there's been a lot of work going on there. I think that the departments have been spending some time recently looking at the structure within classes, the different levels within classes, so that we're really clear. With the middle school, we've been spending some time with Drew and his teachers to say, what is it, what's the format of an academic class. What do you need to do to be ready for an honors level class? What are the different expectations? They're sharing in English. They're sharing some portfolios. So some 8th grade writing is actually going to come over digitally to the high school teachers, and they're going to have an opportunity to take a look at what's going on in the 8th grade before they even start working with the teachers. So we're pretty excited about the work that we're doing. If you look at the cover sheet, our population is going to stay relatively the same, not a lot of change in population. The high school level, we've got in and out with Raymond Choice, so the population changes a little bit day to day, but pretty steady, 950. Our staff is remaining the same. We're so not adding any staffing. We are adding some programming, trying to add some programming without adding staffing, which is a little bit tricky. Initially, I'd requested some additional monies in this year's budget for robotics. We're going to start a robotics program. We're going to have an AP computer science program as well. We were able to, through some grants and through some work and through some 18-19 funds, purchase some of those supplies, so I was able to take that out of the budget. So our operating budget for the high school is very similar to what it was last year. So there's a little bit of change in communication costs. Postage goes up, and some built-in phone costs. You'll see, not in my cover sheets, but in the pink pages, you'll see an increase in summer school cost, where we're trying to, there's been an expansion there. We're trying to do some things. With the move to proficiency, we're better able, I think, to do some remediation for students. So I'm hoping to grab a few more students in the summer and make that a little bit more accessible, so that we have students moving along in the scope and sequence instead of repeating classes in a traditional manner that really sets them back and takes away opportunities. As soon as a student has to repeat a class, that really puts them out of the sequence of being able to access PABS or Westbrook vocational programming, or maybe not being able to access a college course in their senior year. So we're working on ways to find remediation within the school day and within the summer, so that we can keep kids moving along on that line. I'm sorry, I go pretty quickly as well.
Wait,
Just
I had a question about
summer school. Do we charge anything at all for summer school?
What's the charge? There is a
We do?
charge, and there's, based on what I've read, there's some
175 for a course, 175 for a course.
175 for a course, and if there's need-based, we can work with that as well. And then we're trying to look at expanding on what Chris had started last year, where if it's course completion, that's a little bit different than full summer school, where if you're really close, you're not. So we don't want students to be feel like they're paying for their credits. If there's just a few things they need to finish up, I'm going to try to get those things finished up within the school year, so that we can handle those things. But there is a cost, and it's based on we have to use that. The funds from the students help to fund the program.
And just any idea how many students we serve in summer school?
Do you know how many we served last year?
I'm trying to remember, Finnis.
I think this summer we had like 35 to 40 signed up for credit recovery. And then we offered biology, earth science, history, English, and 2 different levels of math. And I want to say we had almost 100 students.
Oh, wow.
That were accessing that.
So for the
75-ish.
For the credit recovery students, and that's what Ryan was talking about, is that if kids need to finish up a project or need to finish up another piece, they only have to be in summer school until they finish that item, and then they're done. It was great motivation by students to come in, get their things done, and that way they did not have to repeat a course, and that was at a much reduced rate than a student who needs to have a complete course. Motivation grows greatly in the summer to get some of that work completion taken care of.
Thank you.
So some of our needs, I think, our teachers are in pretty good shape with supplies and what they need to deliver their curriculum. I strongly believe that we need to offer more course offerings, and that gets tricky because you need to add staff members, and there's a cost there. But we have a lot of upperclassmen, a lot of seniors that are taking 5 classes and not 6, 5 out of an 8 period day, and thank goodness we have we have the opportunity to have students take classes at USM and to do some different things along those lines. But we have a lot of students with multiple study halls within the day, and I really think, based on my past experience, that having students in classes in front of teachers creates a more academic setting. It creates more opportunities for students. If we can have students taking 6 classes instead of 5 or 7 classes instead of 6 in their freshman and sophomore year, that opens up more opportunities in their junior and senior years. So down the road, I will be asking for more teaching staff that could offer additional courses. And we offer a lot of courses. So we offer a lot of AP courses, which are great, and we offer and the language courses, but you've got a chunk of students that if they're not taking advanced placement courses and they're not in advanced language courses and they don't have to remediate courses, they could run out of electives pretty quickly, choice courses that they take. So we've got some ideas. Like I said, we're going to expand course selection next year within the building. We have some teachers that are going to teach some different things, and we're going to work with the master schedule to make some more things available. But that's something that we're looking into. We're addressing it, that leads into, so for next year, we're addressing it with some internships. We're starting an internship program. We didn't bring it forward this year because it wasn't fully formed, so we're going to use our independent study format to pilot some internships, and then I'll bring a proposal for a program to you all next year where we can get some students doing some hands-on work in the field for credit and covering some of the standards and working along those lines. Lynette has been instrumental in making that happen, setting up some of those independent studies and developing the protocols, looking at other programs as to what we should present for 2021 for a program for internships. And that was the last kind of thing that I'd want to say is from the high school perspective, the Director of Community Connections position has been instrumental in the things that we're trying to do this year. There's been a great increase. One of the big takeaways, one of our things we need to report out in 2 years on NEASC is increasing community connections and how do we bring the community into the school and the school out to the community. This position has done that. It covers multiple NEASC recommendations. There is capstone support for both the students and the community. So there's outreach to the community to be prepared for the students coming and what this is going to look like. Daily support for capstone where students can go to a person and say, this is what I'm interested in. And by the end of the day, they've got 4 or 5 contacts, either locally or nationally, where they can go and find information. The mentoring that is taking place with the middle school and having our students connect with middle school students and come up with those connections already made led to some career opportunities. Some of the connections through the capstone project has led to some summer jobs for some of our students. It has been a incredibly impactful position for the high school this year. Along kind of the lines that Drew was speaking of, the capstone work in particular that has been able to kind of flow through that position naturally, I think, would fall on administrators were that position not there, because those type of connections and making those and having those doing that work and being those connections would flow to us, which would take us out of the classroom and detract from the instructional time. So I wanted to make that point that the position has been above and beyond what I had expected, and has had a great impact on our staff and our students at the high school. Yes.
How many schools does Lynette, how many schools do you work with, Lynette?
I've been focusing on the high school and the 2 middle schools just for the first year and building down. So just 3 are really my focus right now, and with Katahdin as well.
And Katahdin, so that's 4. Okay. Marge?
Do we have any endeavors going on to encourage the students to use our vocational schools?
We have the meetings, additional, we do the work that we do every year, where we have the visits, we have students come. This year, we did some work where we had our current students speaking to our prospective students about what they're doing in the different programs. So there's an outreach through the schools, through the guidance department, through the Career Development Center. It is, the potential to be behind on proficiencies because of the requirement in courses, I think scares away some students that could or should access the programming. I think we're talking about different ways to do some visits and different ways to do some things. We're piloting a student who is meeting her ELA requirements through her early childhood program, where she's doing a portfolio, and then she's bringing that back to our English department to look at some different things. So a choice that she wouldn't have had a year ago, she would have had to choose, do I stay in the childhood program and not take this elective that I think can help me at school because it's only offered during this time period. So now she's able to do both. So we're working to try to break down some of those barriers. So it's kind of a two-part thing where number one, try to break down the barriers, and number two, try to sell the programs the best we can. And some of the changes that they're putting in, some of the new programs that they're trying to put in, I think will draw a different group of kids as well.
Yeah, and well, the main reason I bring it up is it's a well-known fact that in Maine, those are the type of people who can get jobs now. You know, your manual laborers, I mean, you're for a carpenter, you're a plumber, HVAC, all that stuff. They make good money, and there's a lot out there. It's just a matter of getting the kids into those trades, you know, which is difficult. And I know, and I think it's been brought up before that if you can get the parents, if you can educate the parents on the benefits of doing some of that, it also helps.
We take the 8th graders
Right.
multiple tours. We did a small group tour a few months ago. There's a select group of girls from both Jordan Small and Wyndham Middle School who are going on a tour on Friday. So there's a lot of early intervention with that as well.
Good. Thanks. Anyone else? Scott?
Can you tell me what types of supplies are purchased with PE and gym?
So PE gym supplies would be balls and nets, and so we do a wide variety of athletic different. So we have a PE 1, which is for freshmen, which is like more traditional PE class, and then students have can choose from a variety of different choice-based electives. So they have there's archers and anglers, so we're doing archery and fishing, and there's bowling. So it's the supplies that would go along with the wear and tear supplies that would go along with the PE classes.
Okay. And what about health? Because you got those two right side by side together, so I was kind of curious.
Which?
On the pink sheet,
Yep.
page 80, it's the second section down, so it looks like supplies for PE and health
Yep.
is holding steady at about $8,000. So I was just kind of curious as to
It's one department, so PE and health is one department that is grouped together. And as Ryan also explained, there are a number of consumables with running an adventure-based program with things that get broken or need to have replacements or things that just wear out. Also the supplies also help to run. There's a complete cardio room, weight room. Supplies need to be purchased for those things as well that are part of the program.
Okay.
It's a very active program. Unlike your many schools, which is the traditional roll out the ball, it's a very active adventure-based program.
And we have our graduation requirements reflect that. We have a full year of health, which most schools don't. So we have a higher requirement of course time in the area as well.
Okay.
And there's healthy eating, healthy living, so there's supplies in the kitchen as well.
Okay. So do you typically go through that entire $8,000 a year? Wow. All right. Can I have another one?
Sure.
Okay. I know we do it every year, but I want to do it again. Auditorium manager. Why does that fall under his budget? It seems like there's so many other schools that utilize the auditorium. I know that the high school probably does utilize it more, but why does the auditorium manager fall under the high school budget?
Because that's where he works and spends the majority of his time.
Okay.
So yes, all buildings take advantage of that, and it's a great resource for us to have, to be able to have someone who can not only manage it for school function, but also manage the investment that was made by both communities in that facility to keep it going, because it is our most used public space in the district. And it does take a full-time person to keep that place up and running, to handle all the different shows and all different levels, as well as the community is.
Okay. How many hours a week does that person work?
It's a salaried position, so anywhere between 40 and 50.
Okay.
Anna? Do you want to
I
comment?
was just gonna, CJ is,
always there.
like, how we found him and have gotten, he's amazing. He's definitely, he's listed as the auditorium manager. My experience with CJ has been, there's not a kid at Wyndham High School that hasn't interacted with him, that he hasn't touched in some way. He, has great relationships with kids that maybe aren't your traditional thought of, like, the cool kids, and he brings them out of their shell and he helps them find that passion and that love that they have. So as far as I'm concerned, you put him anywhere and we'll just keep paying him and keeping him. He's a real good guy.
That's it. All I got.
Okay. Mark?
Just point of information, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but every school pays, I think it's $250 if you go through the line items every year towards the auditorium at the high school. Because I think I asked this a few years ago, there's a little small line item in every school. I said, what is that, 200? I think it's $250.
I would need to research that.
So they do pay some,
Okay.
a piece of what goes on at the high school.
Okay, anybody else have a question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your first time through the budget
Thanks for being
onslaught. Kiss it goodbye for next year.
Yeah. Next year you want stuff.
Okay, Rich?
This, Rich.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
You.
We've done this before, so.
Yes. Mr. Mazur?
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. Nice to be here. For the audience at home who may not know what the Katahdin program is, we're the alternative program at the high school. What makes us alternative? Our practice is experiential. We integrate therapeutic adventure, service learning, internships, and I'll interrupt my prepared remarks to put a personal plug in once again for the community coordinator. Lynette has been invaluable to our program, and I'll touch upon a few things that she's helped us with further on, but I just want to make sure that her importance cannot be stated enough in terms of how she's helped the students in the Katahdin program. And the community realizing what they can do to our schools as well and how they can help our schools. That's the biggest thing. I mean, sure, the individual kid thing has been great, but I'm now getting businesses and community members calling me to say, how can I work with your students out of the blue? And that's because of the work that she's done to encourage them to talk to us. And that's something that hasn't really happened before. So thank you, and thank you for listening to that. So what else about our program is alternative? We use restorative practices, community partnerships, and we meld all of these things into our classroom instruction to help our kids. Our new location at Wyndham High School continues to encourage our students to take healthy risks. We're attempting new opportunities. We encourage these things all the time. So many of our kids come to us and they've been sort of frightened about where their education might be going because they haven't been successful in the high school. And so they come to us and we really try to get them to see the educational experience in a new way, in a new light, and to take some chances, take some risks. They may have taken risks when they were at the high school or the middle school, and those risks didn't work out. We're constantly fighting that battle of trying to get them to keep pushing themselves, because the goal is graduation, and then not just graduation, but a long and fulfilling and happy, successful life after graduation. So we use our experiences and try to make them as broad and as varied as possible, so they have as many chances to be that happy, successful person that they can be. And we are very pleased with how things are working out at the high school. It's a big change from our former location, which you folks visited, despite the mud and snow and ice and everything else where we were at Camp Hines, which was a neat place. Very happy at the high school. We've been taken very well care of by the complete staff there, and we thank you very much. And our kids are happy there. Our families are happy. Our staff is happy. So good news on that front. In terms of how we're looking to support some aspects of the current strategic plan, the one thing I would focus on right now is the fact that we've got our mentorship program already up and running, and a lot of that has come from the work that Lynette has done, and she and I have worked on some paperwork together to make things make sense and tying things into curriculum, so that's been wonderful. I have 4 students currently in internships. I have 2 builders, I have an electrician, and a sailing program, for lack of a better, the schooner company, Portland Schooner Company. They're all working with our students, and 3 out of the 4 students that are currently in internships have been offered employment for the summer, which is huge. This is huge. Yeah. And I'd like to stress, I mean, these are kids, a couple of whom probably would not have even considered these options without coming to Katahdin and being introduced to what goes on out in the world. These are new experiences for them. They've found things they've loved. They're actively participating in these internships, enthusiastically participating, and like I say, 3 out of 4 at this point employed for the summer, which is so wonderful. Next aspect in terms of strategic plan for next year, if we move on to that, a big part for what we're wanting to do is this supporting the balance and quality of life for our members. And with that, we want to make sure that our students are getting as much support as they possibly can be from our staff. And when I say our staff, I'm going to mean all the people that make up the Katahdin staff, but we also utilize college volunteers and interns who come and help our students, and then social work interns who work with our adventure-based counselor. We do a lot of work with our students, obviously, but we do a lot of work with our families. We emphasize the work for each of our kids from a team standpoint, meaning we want all of the stakeholders in each of our students' lives to be a part of our team. So it requires a lot of work. We 24-hour job, shall we say. Yeah. I'm in touch with parents a lot at strange hours and weekends and late evenings, and it requires a lot of work. It's intense work, and so we're very thankful to get the support that we do, but we do a lot of outreach on our own to find these interns and volunteers and bring them in, because we know it's important to get the support there for our kids. So that's sort of those 2 things in a nutshell. In terms of additions to our budget this year, this is sort of addition by subtraction, so bear with me. You'll see numbers increasing on two different items, which it pains me to say that, but it's coming out of money that was a big amount that we've decreased. So I've increased 2 different line items, $2,500 in both our food budget. Food is so important to us. We enhance our curriculum by introducing food in a number of ways for our students to learn through, and lots of cooking is done with our group and all the various components that you can look in, and it's very healthy, nutritional cooking, and so lots of positive benefits coming out of that. So we've increased our food budget for that, and then $2,500 for our student activity budget as well. Our out of the building experiences are what make Katahdin unique and alternative and provide those growth opportunities for kids. So we've asked for $2,500 in each of those lines. Those are coming from the $50,000 line item that had been in our budget under the AmeriCorps blanket, if you will. That was a supply line that has been in the budget for 6 years now. We've eliminated $45,000 of that and thrown that back into the kitty, or just, no more on our budget. And so for 5 of that I kept and divided that up between those 2 line items. There's no change to our staff. We don't have any social work interns currently this year. We're hoping to add 2. Those don't bring any cost to the system at all. And there's no change in any other positions. That's all I have for formal remarks, but I would like to add just one little caveat. A very long-term employee of both the Real School and the Katahdin program passed away a few weeks ago. Her name was Carol Creaser. She was a driver for the district. She drove for over 30 years and transported students. Probably some of you know Carol. Wonderful woman. What she probably most identified with was being a member of this RSU 14 community, and working with students was literally the thing that made her get up in the morning with a smile on her face. So I think in terms of her memory, just the fact that I can formally get her name written into the minutes would be a very nice tribute to Carol. And I just thought I'd like to make sure that that happens, and let her know that she will be missed and was well loved.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions?
Have any questions? Mrs. Brooks?
You have 20 students. What is the max that you can have?
We have 22 students, so this is a fluid document. You also might not have seen my increase in supplies that I asked for about 15 minutes ago. 22 students,
So you have 22?
max 20, 25 probably.
25?
Yeah, we're working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
You guys have some people probably? Yeah? All right, just a couple. That would get us to 24.
And is are middle school students still considered for your program? I noticed that on
No,
your projected.
we're at this point a high school program.
You're
exclusively.
simply a high school?
Yes, ma'am. 9 through 12.
Okay.
Any other
Begs-
questions?
Begs the question then.
Sounds like a need for a social worker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on my list, for sure.
Some of those kids that live outside your office, huh?
Is there a reason, all right, let me ask you it this way. Is there a reason why you no longer take middle school students?
Yes.
I don't want to, I mean,
This probably
you to
isn't
set your hair on fire or
isn't the,
anything.
no, you're not, well, good luck
boy,
with that.
yeah, that's not gonna happen.
I'm not sure this is the
Okay,
place
all
for
right.
that discussion.
Okay.
It's complicated, but I would like to have that discussion with
I'm
Mr.
just
Patton
curious
joining
because you
us.
currently have middle school students according, no, you don't.
No,
No, you don't. I'm looking at, all right, never mind. Get the hook, I'm off.
but there's not a magic need at the high school level for an alternative program, and there isn't one at the middle school level. That's a whole nother issue, but
I'd like to have that discussion later.
yeah, I would too.
It's on my list.
Great.
Yes.
Just a comment. Each year, you have your own graduation, special graduation, and I've gone to it. And for people who have not gone to that graduation, it is kind of like, sorry, Tom, one step ahead of adult ed, because you're seeing things that just like would never ever have happened, and you will never see so many grateful parents in your life as you will see at that graduation. I mean, because they're dealing with students who were going, in their parents' minds, they felt like failures because their students weren't going to. And I just want to put my 2 cents on that one, because I might have heard every one of them. And there are some parents there, and it didn't make you want to cry. They are so happy and grateful to have that school. Sorry.
Makes me cry.
Yes, you do.
Might cry right now. Is that it?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay, the other Mr. Rich.
Yeah, Mr. Richard. Backwards.
Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Mr. Karen alluded to this a little bit, but we have a young man, Zachary Allen, who's with us. More in particular, he's spending some time with me. He is doing his senior capstone project, and he walked in the other day and he said he was interested in school administration, and more in particular, athletic administration. So I said, why don't you take a little time and think about this? And he came back, so he's here, and I welcome him, and we have a lot of good things set up. So just a shout out for you, Zach. So thanks for coming. Some good things going on real quick in athletics. I feel this year we provided and have provided and will provide some great experiences for the kids. We have some quality coaches. We have supportive communities, a supportive school board, supportive administration, teachers and staff, great boosters, and last but not least, this isn't what it's all about, but we do have competitive teams, which is always nice when they go out and compete and represent the schools and the towns that they're from. It's always a nice thing, and they, by and large, they do it the right way when they do compete. There are some things that I'd like to draw your attention to in the athletic budget. For the first time, I think this is my 9th or 10th year here. It's gone by so fast. I'll say 9, because I know Mr. Hansen was here one more year than I have been. But this is the first time, really, that usually when I have increases, it's always the HR side is the heavier one, is really the result of the increases. This time, there is increases on the HR side, but the bulk of it is really through some accounts that I've needed to address over the last few years. And I'd just like to walk you through that real quickly and just touch upon each item so everybody is aware of it. If you can go to page 165 of the white pages. How am I doing, Zach? All right. So on page 165 of 253, you'll see an increase down towards the bottom. You'll see uniforms, and the digits are 110.40 and 120.40. You'll see an increase in each of those lines of $2,000. That's for Jordan Small Middle School and Wyndham Middle School. This past year, between the two schools, I had 2,500 total to outfit the kids. So that's one area that really needs to be addressed. Having $3,000 and $3,500 at another school won't. They're not going to be running around in top of the line, but at least we'll be able to update something and keep our rotation going. So that's one item that I wanted to speak about. I also wanted to talk about on page 166 of 253, you'll see an increase quarter of the way down of $3,500. That's for Wyndham Middle School Alpine Ski. It's a new program. It's taking off. It's been a great experience for the kids. Participation is a little bit more than what I anticipated, and that's, as we all say, that's a good problem to have. But this is something to offset some of the costs associated with that sport at the mountain is in regards to training fees. Another item I'd like to draw your attention to is page 168 of 253. You'll see at the top a slight increase of 2% of $1,600. And that's really anticipated officials' fees increase. Every year they're negotiated through the state as far as what the officials per sport get paid. And it's something that as a school we really don't have much control over. I wish we had control over of which officials officiated sometimes. Even that we don't. But in any event, that's almost like a negotiated increase and it's something that I should plan for financially. Another few items that I'd like to draw your attention to. Mr. Howell talked about this a little bit, and so did Mr. Karen, but 168 of 253, just down underneath that, halfway through the page, you'll see repairs and maintenance, an additional $2,500. And what that is for the weight room and cardio room. It's not necessarily to buy new equipment. It's to get programs, to get a preventive maintenance program in there to where they might be able to touch up some of the equipment and different things, because the bulk of that equipment came through the PEP grant, and it's starting to get worn out. I don't want to say it's gone. I don't want to say it's inoperable, because that's not accurate, but some of the equipment in there needs a TLC. And so what we'll do is some of the monies that are set aside for phys ed and health will also go into that, and hopefully this summer we can get a contractor to kind of address some of the items that need to be taken care of. 3 more items on page 168 of 253. Again, right underneath that, you'll see an increase for rentals and lease at the high school level. This is for $3,000, and what this is for is that it's really spread out over fall, winter, and spring. We've had the luxury in the fall, in the past X amount of years, we've always had football and soccer going late into the year, where we've had so much rain, maybe even a little bit of snow, and they still need to practice because we've been lucky. They've made deep runs. That's to help offset some turf rental time, because with artificial turf you can do a lot of different things. Indoor track, if you've ever been at the high school at around 2:30 to 4 Monday through Friday, I hear a chuckle, you'll see kids just all over the place, and it's good, but there are indoor track athletes practicing different events in hallways, in a ox gym. We have pole vaulters that don't even pole vault because they can't, they only do it at meets. And this goes for rental time at USM. And then in the spring, obviously spring sports start Monday. We can't access our fields. We have lacrosse in a gym, and that just doesn't work well, does it, Mr. Hanson? And that's to help offset some rental at St. Joe's to take care of their artificial turf. I wish I had more in that account, but I also know through deliberations with the A-team, there's other things that also took precedence as well. The last 2 items are on 169 of 253 that I'd like to speak to. And 169, yes. And the first one is uniforms at the high school level. It's an increase of $10,000, which is it's significant. You can see last year, this current year, had $5,000. That's barely enough to really do a set of uniforms sometimes, because when you look at uniforms, we'll just pick on soccer, you need home and away, and you roster 20 kids. So it goes quickly. And you can always take the cheap way out and get a lower end uniform, but your uniform cycle is just going to deteriorate really fast. I have the luxury of knowing a few vendors and having a good relationship with them to where we can kind of get a better quality, and we go with a custom uniform that just will last longer, looks better, and I just think in the long run it's something that we need to address. I know the last few years when we've had to make some slight reductions. That's a line that I really kind of hit because it's where I had a little bit of flexibility. Another, and the last increase I have is for $5,000. It really somewhat goes hand in hand with uniforms because when and if you have to make some cuts, usually supplies and uniforms are those areas that we have to attack. And I'm looking to build $5,000 back into the supply line at the high school level. It's amazing what the cost of some supplies are, and the coaches are fantastic. We have a great boosters club, and the coaches are not, I want. They're very good. So, but they do need some items to you know, work with their teams and keep the kids safe. So those are some items that I had as far as increases that I wanted to talk about. It's, I think in the, like I said, either the 9 or 10 years that I've been here, it is the biggest increase that I've had in the athletic department, but I know that it's something that these items are real important as far as moving forward and keeping the program up to date the best we can. And at this time I can answer any and all questions, and of course I can bring Zach up for this part and I can sit down, but he's doing fine. But
All right, Rich, thanks. I've got a question and a comment. In terms of the rentals and leases, can you just remind me, there's no ice rental on there. Is that because Westbrook pays for that portion in our agreement?
correct. We're in a cooperative agreement with Westbrook for ice hockey. So part of the agreement when we broke it up is they took the practice ice and the game ice. We took the stipends and the transportation, and it was almost a 50-50 match.
Okay, that's what
Correct.
I thought.
Yep.
And then my comment is going to be around the uniforms and the supplies. And again, just speaking for me, but what I would like to see going forward is that we get onto a regular cycle of uniform replacement. And I'll say whether we need it or not, but just to approach it that way. I mean, because I think of how we do it with our buses, and we're on a schedule, and you know, in tight budgets, we never go to Mike and say, all right, Mike, we can't get a bus this year. We know that we're on a replacement schedule, and that's just the way it is. And you know, that way we can avoid the ebbs and the flows of cuts one year and increases another. So, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on that, but
I think it's a good idea.
probably make it easier for you too.
It would. I had to look around here real quick if there was a baseball player here, but they have a uniform that they're wearing this year that's going on 8 years old. It's just the top. But that goes to my point a little bit, where we bought custom uniforms. They've made it that long, but this is it. So these monies that you see here would go towards that. And we did, and we still somewhat do have a little bit of a cycle, but it'd be nice, to your point, to kind of rehab that a little bit, make it a little bit more consistent.
I think if the lowers get that age, no sliding into home.
Yeah. True. True.
Any other comments or questions?
All right.
Nice job, Zach.
Zach?
Good job, Zach. Thank you.
We're only being nice to them because you're here.
That's why he brought you.
You guys
Mr.
ready to
Hickey.
sit down? It's nothing personal against Bob, right?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for enduring a long night. I'll pass around the usual obligatory paperwork here. Thanks, Chris. So, I'll just talk about the banal static while the paper's going around. There's been no change in the size of our staff. The major increases have been literally minimal. There's not much in end-user devices, which is unusual for my department. And so we've got the budget paperwork and then this colored paperwork in the middle, which is cost justification of the investment we are making on the end-user devices. And then I was asked to also bring forth the technology plan. And this was generated through our Bright Byte survey, so it's data-driven. It's a little bit cryptic, and it jumps around, and the way I've printed it is a little small to read, but you can see how we are moving ahead with that, but I'll save that till last. So in the budget, there's been some shifts, which look significant, but it's really moving money from left pocket to right pocket. The state has mandated that we take what was the software line and the annual software subscription fees and put it into educational and non-educational. There's been transfers from other departments and buildings of their software into mine. So it looks like massive increases on the software educational, 77%, but it's really, there's not anything new in that whole category that I'm aware of. It's just a shift, and we can go into that in detail. The largest,
I'm sorry, Marge?
Yep.
Sorry. Okay, you said this was a shift. So that's a shift from other people's, from other people's cost centers?
yes, because like,
'Cause I didn't see big decreases.
okay, for example, like Bill's school dude was $10,000 came into mine. There were things that were in Christine's that were educational software that came into mine. IXL, on and on and on, a bunch of things. You can see in the detail of what's under the educational, it lists on and on all the software, so those came to me.
But you and Bill are kind of interchangeable anyways.
I think probably we'd see the greatest change would be in Christine's budget and in Bill's budget. For most of the buildings, they very minimal software lines. Several years ago, those were all moved to Christine's lines, and they've just continued to migrate.
So they're so small, they really wouldn't have shown up as, thank you.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. So, like, for instance, the NWEA is $22,000. That didn't used to be in mine, so they're significant there. So if we could focus a little bit on the lease purchase, which is the biggest definitive cost of what we did buy. This colored document, this, I like to refer to it,
This one,
this single colored page document by itself.
Are you on 81 of?
Oh, on the budget?
Yep.
Lease purchase. I am on, sorry, I'm lost here. I'm having a hard time finding it. Well, it's got to be in here somewhere.
This is where you are on 81.
81? Okay. Oops. Yes, thanks. It was on the last page of Hayden. Sorry about that. Okay, so this colored document that I like to refer to as the ugly document, it's very ugly but functional. And so I've lumped the iPads in the colors towards the top and then the MacBook Airs towards the bottom. So you can see the fiscal years, we had iPads for K3. The first year we bought them were 5 devices per class for K1. And then with grades 2 and 3, when the primary got a little creative, moved 1 to the teacher. Raymond used them a little bit differently and had them in a resource area in the library. But it worked out to the same number per student. Second year, 17-18, so July of 2018, we got 5, which the year we're in, 5 iPads for all of K3. So that brought K1 to 10 per classroom, and it brought 2 or 3 to 5 per classroom, plus the teacher device. And so the request in the current year budget is 1920. You can see that year highlighted a little darker to show where we are currently. And we're asking for 5 iPads per class, K1 only. And we're working towards what was discussed in the past of a one-to-one K1 for iPads, because what that does is it opens up, bless you, Jeannie. It opens up the Apple Classroom where a teacher can control all the iPads and direct all the instruction at the same time, look over them. So it makes it more useful for that device. And we are, of course, focusing on iPads for K1 level because of the tactile and lack of keyboarding skills, etc. So there seemed to be support for this. So we're moving in a direction we've discussed earlier. That's why you can see out in 20 to 21, the year after the next one, oh no, I'm sorry, new iPads, 5 more in the orange there for the next year. So we're trying to move towards that goal. And then in the other highlighted yellow, that's not coming up in this year's budget, that'd be 1920, but we skip a year and look ahead, just giving the board the view of the ebbs and flows of purchases and technology. We'll be ending MacBook Airs for 6th grade. They'll have 4 years of use, and then of course those won't be wasted. Those will be taken back in and being support devices for 4, 5, all the other grades that have MacBook Air. So those will be reutilized because breakage will rob some of the inventory. And then since we have MacBook Airs from grades 2 up, we have a huge need for a huge spare pool. So this is just to show where we are, where we're hoping to come back to in another year, in another 2 years, show the leveled off of purchasing, and that's where we're trying to get to. Now you can see in the gray, will the state continue to provide grades 7 and 8 on the end of theirs? We don't know still. The state has no information on that. And so we know that things are being formulated in Augusta. There's a positive environment and support for education and technology and education. So we're crossing our fingers and hoping best thoughts there. So I also took a snapshot of next year's enrollment to justify the devices that we have. And again, this is a fluid document. These are numbers as of today. So if you were looking real closely, Ryan's numbers were off like 6 from mine, but of course across grade 8 from both schools, 9, 10, 11, which would all roll forward, easily you could have 6 kids come and go. Or I just did a snapshot of numbers at a different time than he did. And then on the back, these are the classrooms. So this is how we came to the number of devices we're requesting. So primary school has 11 kindergartens, 10 first grades. So that's 21 times 5 per classroom is 105 for Wyndham Primary. There's 3 and 3 for K and 1 in RES. So that's 6 times the 5 per classroom is 30. The 30 and the 105 came up to the 135 I'm requesting. So it's not per every 5 students divided by students, because those kids are always moving in and out of programs. There's special ed, etc. So that's how my best guess to cover all the kids. Briefly, is there any questions on what I've covered so far? Nope. Okay, and then, alrighty, and then this is the Bright Bites data points, and one of the things that their system, because this is created off recommendation templates and data from Bright Bites, so this isn't like specifically a format that we've designed here in district. We're just collaborating to use this data. And it focuses on communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. If you read through, there's 21st century skills. So there's a lot of things that we're already, you can see we're on the mark. Some areas it doesn't show us as strong as we'd like to be, others are very strong. And that is a curve that we're working on, and under Christine's program, she's addressing all these things, and we're getting there. So, all right, that's it. Is there any questions? Are there any details I can give? Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped some stuff. Back to, thank you, Chris, page 81. The other things that we're buying. All right, so there's, pardon?
White sheets are
This is 81 of 253 on the white sheets.
okay. Thank you.
So, in addition to the iPads, The special ed iPads are ancient. They're version 1 and 2, and right now current is version 6 iPad. So they haven't been able to keep up, so we said, well, let's deal with that and get those upgraded across the district. That's special ed across all grades. And then there's MacBook Airs for the teachers K-5 in Raymond, because they have MacBook Pros, which are old, and they've suffered through with them and made them last. But we want everybody on the same platform. We don't want to show favoritism, and we know that we've got MacBook Airs throughout, so we're bringing them up. So.
And those were pre-consolidation MacBook Pros.
Right.
They've been around for a while.
Shivers.
Marge?
Sorry,
Back on the special ed iPads, the 36 that you're buying, do they have 36 now?
Yes, this is based on what's in the field deployed now.
Okay, so have they not this is a question, have they not requested additional ones for the large number of students, special ed students that will be coming in, Chris?
I would have to double check with Lisa on her plan for that piece. I think it would be to replace the additional, so I'm not sure right now in that program if she already has existing iPads. I know from my visit there yesterday, there are kids who are using iPads in that program. I just don't know the age, but we can check on that.
And also, this hasn't been like a static performing thing. Like, over the years, she's bought some out of special ed money, and I've gotten some. So I said, well, why am I buying for regular ed kids and not special ed kids? So I bought these. I'm sure she might have some extra money if there's a little bit of a glut that we haven't covered, so.
I just want to make sure that we've got it all covered.
I think one of the biggest things that you probably saw is a reduction, and it's actually, I think, one of the biggest disappointments from the MLTI program, which is in the past we've been able to purchase those machines at a very discounted rate, and given where the state is and what they put out for expenditures in the current MLTI program, it looks like they're going to be actually taking all those back from us, and we'll be using a reseller to actually dispose of those iPads to get more money. So we used to be able to pick them up for anywhere from $49 in the old days, so I think we were paying $149, is that right? Or
Well, they're up to $185, $190 for the MacBook Airs now.
Okay.
so
Yeah.
those will no longer be an option.
Right. And then under technology-related hardware on page, I stapled over it, 80 of 253. You can see there's some network infrastructure. We've been kind of neglecting that for a while, and we can no longer. So there's some, switches for the disaster recovery center and things like that. So.
I'm glad to see that, because I know how important that is when it's not working,
Right.
so.
Thank you very much. All right. Any
It's
questions?
still a reduction.
Yeah.
in that line item.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hanson.
All right. Good evening. It's hard to believe this is year number 10 for me. Just yesterday I was starting off as a newbie as my first time looking at this budget, so I've had a chance to really kind of understand it pretty well. I think one of the things I'm really fortunate as a board, I want to thank you because you have supported the facilities department and our ability to maintain our buildings. And I think it has a huge impact on not only the way the buildings look, but also the kids come to school and they see a building that looks nice. It helps just start the day off right. So first I want to thank you for that. So our mission, and I've said this before, I'd like to read to you, is to operate and maintain the RSU 14 properties in such a way that allows the instructional staff to focus solely on the educational deliverables without distraction from building systems or maintenance issues. This is accomplished through planned maintenance, continued efforts to improve efficiencies, incorporating the latest energy saving technologies and methods, and implementing long-term solutions to operational building issues. Now, I want to tell you, this has been a challenging year with that, with the issues we have at the high school and the glycol leaks and all that stuff. But in general, as we've attacked these problems, we've made some long-term solutions to issues we've had, and I'm really happy about that. So generally, I always review the types of investments that we talk about. The budget, facilities budget is very challenging because if you look at the budget, I'll say one thing Stacy did this year, which was really great, is you look at the white papers and pages where we had MIP budgeted before. She put in the removal so you could see where the pluses and minuses came, because I wish that it was set up that we could budget the MIP and CIP funds in one area so you could see that they were staying the same.
Do you want to just go over MIPs?
Yeah, I'm going to explain
just
those.
say what they are.
Okay, that was my next thing. So I generally talk about there's four types of funding we have. We have our operating budget, which is what are in the white pages that you have there. Part of that, so it has R&M. And then in addition to that, we have MIP, which we call Maintenance Improvement Project. And that is a cash expenditure during that fiscal year. And it's confined to that fiscal year to fix something. So it's really like going out and buying a new pair of gloves. You know, boom, done, you're finished. We also have CIP, which is our Capital Improvement Project, which is a lease purchase, which happens over multiple years. So when I come to the board for that, it requires board approval. The board say, yes, we're going to commit to a lease purchase, one of which we've recently done was the generator for the treatment plant. It's a 3-year lease at $9,000 a year for that generator. So when the board committed to that, you committed to 3 years of that payment. And the last part that we look at is capital reserve projects. That project gets funded through year-end fund balance. So at the end of the year, we're fortunate to have expenses be less than what we budgeted for. And the finance committee recommends it, and the board approves it, and the voters also go ahead and approve it. We're able to transfer those excess fund balances from the general fund into capital reserves designated for those projects. It's really important. It's designated for that. So, like for instance, we have, money that we get set aside for, the fixing the roof at the Jordan Small School was for that. We couldn't deviate that to do something else because that's what the voters said it was for. So that is the one thing you have to be careful of, is that funding has to be used for those purposes. Okay, so. So I said this before, I feel like a broken record, that, if you look at our asset value, we're looking at $200 million of assets, and soon hopefully to be more as we look at it in the middle school. So again, we look at a 50-year replacement cycle, that's $4 million a year. So in the perfect world, I ask you for $4 million of replacements. And that's not repairs, that's replacements on top of the repair budget. So when I started with Dawn, not 10 years ago, we had $200,000 total for capital MIP and CIP. The budget that I'm presenting to you now for MIP is $300,000. CIP is $270,000, and it's up $70,000 from last year. What's driving that is the boiler replacement. So we're getting close to that $600,000 number that I've told Dawn as a target. Okay. Now that's a long ways from the $4 million. Okay. But the other thing that adds to that is the CRP funding, and then you get these state projects that give you that influence of money that help you over the big hurdle. So they all kind of work together to get you to that number. So quick overview as far as this year goes for our budget. We are up 5.1% in facilities, which is $283,000. And you have to excuse me because I'm getting old now. I need to use these so I can read my phone. Now, of that, approximately $160,000 of it is contractual salary and benefits. So and there's no new staff positions. That's just what it is. In addition of that, $69,000 of that is the additional CIP funding for the boiler for the high school, and also the adult ed building put in. So that's a lion's share of that 283 is those two things. The repair budgets did go up 2%. I'm telling you now, most of my vendors are showing me increases that are higher than that. So I think I can still get by where I'm at, but it's a pretty modest increase. So if we look at tracking from 2017 to this year, we had a low in 18 of 461,000 of CIP and MIP. To this year we're at 570. In 17 we were 664. So we're getting close to that number, which is great. I won't, if you like me, I can go through the detail of the CIP projects, probably not. But, you know, there are projects that are key. The new projects are really a Jordan Small boiler and the high school boiler. Those are the two really big new projects that we're looking at for year one coming up. The Jordan Small boiler was brand new 31 years ago.
Yeah.
Guideline life is 20 to 25 years for a boiler. Okay, and there's just one boiler in the building. Unfortunately, that doesn't give you the ability to kind of roll the dice a little bit. It's just it. So it really is recommended for replacement. Has been for a while. The high school boiler, you got all familiar with the fact that those boilers weren't particularly really high quality long-term boilers, as far as my opinion, and it's just my opinion. But we've done investigations, seen significant evidence of leaking between the sections, and one has a failed section. So it's really time to move ahead with that. We did make it through the winter, and with a little bit of TLC. Yes, Pete?
Bill, so on those boilers, how many years are we financing them for?
I have here that we're financing for 5 years.
Okay.
And what we'll end up doing is that the bid is going out for those boilers shortly, and we get the final numbers, we may adjust that, and that will come back to I believe, to finance and to the board for approval. Okay. As far as MIP projects go, just some highlights on that I'd like to tell you about is that we are, two things that are in here is some conversion to LED lighting. We're going to be working with Efficiency Man to get money from that. But that does two things for us. It reduces our maintenance costs, and it's also going to provide a long-term cost savings in electricity. One of the things that's been really great is that we've seen flat funding for electricity and fuel for quite a long time now. It's really coming, we're getting tighter on conservation and how we use those utilities. And there isn't an ounce of oil or a kilowatt of electricity that's made a kid's education any better. So we're trying to get that out as much as possible. So with that, I don't know what questions you have for me. Again, I don't have too many exciting increases. Yep.
On pink sheet, page 9 of 83, I was just curious, there's a manager salary there with the 21% increase up near the top,
I would have to have Chris refer to that part, because that's...
third line down.
Yeah. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't, on the HR side, I don't do the salary increases, so I...
Okay. Then on page 11 of 83,
Yep.
3/4 of the way down, it's a big jump in the telephone bill, an increase of $7,200.
And that's track and actual.
Okay.
That's really what that is. Stacy looks at actual and tracks it. I know that we're having some increases through the microwave we have now for radio communication from Blackstrap to the high school, and then the improved radio communications we have in the buses when we go digital. So that's part of that.
Oh, okay. On page 12 of 83,
Yep.
about 9 lines down or so, there's an equipment one with the, increase of, it's no increase, it's $25,000. That, I think it was central office. Is that all?
Yeah,
of
that's
that
a
new-
generator for district office. It's
Oh,
that's
the
an
genera-
MIP project.
Oh, that's that
Yep.
generator you're gonna move?
Yes. Yep. So what that is we're going to be adding a generator to district office, because the office is critical to the function of the district as well as financials, and we've had quite a few days we can't operate. And it also is our command center should we have a crisis, and when we have no electricity, we found it to be quite challenging. We went through a pretty significant event earlier this year when we had kids in school and no electricity, and trying to manage without any power made communication very difficult. So that's what that's focused on.
It's amazing you went this
I
long
have
without
one.
realizing this one.
Well, also, just if I can just say one thing about the project, is that we are looking to do a share with the town of Wyndham with the generator that's coming out of the current transportation facility. and us taking a leg off of that, and then the other 2 going into town hall. So it's to recycle an existing generator, but there's going to be some costs associated with bringing power across the street, or that standby power, because I'm
Yep.
assuming the generator will be on their side of the street.
Okay, one more. On the white pages, 45 of 253. And this one, if you could just like check into it. It says down near the bottom, these I think are the leases. And the high school lockers, it says year 4 or 5, and that's what it said. Was it that one? Last year it said year 3 or 4. Is it a 4 or a 5 year?
I will check into that.
Okay, that one.
Yep.
And then if you go down to Durden Small boiler plant, and it's probably the same because we didn't put it in, right?
Correct.
That's why it still says
Yep.
105.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for all your work. And thank you for putting like in hours that are like unbelievable. I leave meetings and I go by and Mr. Bill, Mr.
Still
Bill,
there.
7 o'clock and on, he's still there.
It was really cool. If you get a chance to go into the high school last Friday, we had Teacher in Service Day. The staff members went in and went to our 2 test rooms that we're working on with the LED lights. And I got some great feedback that I hadn't anticipated. The nurse and also folks involved with kids with concussion said to me, is it possible that we could get some rooms that have tunable light? By that we mean we change the color, because it really impacts, and then also special ed, it impacts behavior.
Sure.
And it actually, with both the systems looking at, we can do that. So we're going to work that into our plan. It wouldn't be in every space, but spaces without windows, spaces with special ed, concussion space, and relaxing spaces where kids need to go to unwind, we can actually do that. So the staff was pretty excited to be part of that. So I encourage you, if you go into the high school, to go see those 2 rooms if you haven't already, because they're really kind of neat. The tools they give the teacher to control lighting in the space is really unmatched to what we've had before.
And if I could just add one thing, which Bill, you're leaving out, the high school lighting system is no longer made,
Right.
and you can't get a whole lot of parts for it, and so as the former landlord, if you lose a card in that system, you lose classroom light for several days. There's one person in Boston who has the ability to work on it. So as much as it seems like, why are they changing over lights in the high school, it will significantly improve and also ensure that we don't lose classes, because we can actually turn the lights on.
And literally with the new system from my office, a teacher could call me and say, the lights are really too bright, can you change them? I can log into that room and I can change those lights. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
all right, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Bill.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, we've now reached the time in the agenda where we can ask for public comment. Any public want to comment? Thank you. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to go into the executive session.
I move to approve going into executive session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 4056A.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay, we're in executive session.